All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. It's great to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sarah Hallis. I'm the Leadership and Career Services Manager for the Information Technology Academy, or ITA. And we have in the room today hosts, both returning hosts as well as new hosts for our students who are going to be doing internships throughout campus. And we have some former student interns who are going to be talking with us about their experiences as well. So I hope you got a chance to enjoy, it's still rolling, this PowerPoint that was displayed before the start of the program. We'll let it roll for a little bit as well now. Anyway, this really highlights a lot of our students' work, and apologies to the host whose picture is up here in case you, so our students sometimes get a little weird about their picture being on display, so my apologies if one of our hosts was also a little surprised by that. Anyway, so the ITA is a pre-college program. It's a pretty innovative program whose goal is to help diversify UW-Madison. And we have a triple focus on academic preparation, leadership development, and technological literacy. So we've been housed within DoIT, the Division of Information Technology, since the program's inception in 1999. In your folders, you'll see that there's a actual, after our agenda in here, there's a handout, an informational handout about ITA that you can take a moment to read at your own leisure. That gives a little more context to our students and our program. So the students who are going to be interning with you this summer have been in our program for over 2 years at this point. And each academic year they come to our campus in computer science, which is right next door. By the time that they graduate with us, they have been on campus for 72 Saturdays over the course of their career. They're here from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. every other Saturday. So it's a pretty intense commitment on their part, and we're very proud of them. They're fantastic students. So prior to them interning with you, they will have done 2 summers of summer camp, and that includes both an introduction to all of the topics, technological topics that we cover in our curriculum the first summer, and then the second summer they have the opportunity to participate in film camp, so they get really an in-depth exposure to what it means to develop films. And then they're doing the internship before their 11th grade year, and then before their 12th grade year, they do what's called the senior residential experience. So your part in our program fits in that 3rd summer of their experience with us. So today, just a little bit about what we're doing. We're going to have a chance to get to know each other a little bit, learn a little bit about this generation of students. There's lots of different names for them. Hear from a panel, like I said, of employers and past interns, and then just go over some of the next steps to get you prepared for the internship, whether you're hosting in session A or session B. So thank you so much for being here, really appreciate it. Feel free throughout the program to get up and get more snacks, that's what they're there for. So thank you so much. And so right now what we're going to do, as you can see on the agenda, the next item is I'd like you all to do introductions at your table. And if you could share your name, your workplace, the internship opportunity that you have this year for students, and the number of years as an internship host. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that now.
We work together. We know each other.
I've been training for 7 months. This is my 2nd year doing this. And the first year I put it in about 8 years. And then we also have 2 years on top. Very excited to hear that. And someone else made that. It was a recent addition to the SDS session.
Yes, we all will be my nephew. This is my first time doing this. I was your instructor. Yes, actually, I work at
So I'm a writer. Last year, I wrote a story about
Is your host
Exactly. I'm Jim Porter, but I work for 2018.
I was
Research,
in 2017, started an internship.
mainly with a
Well,
national
months
institute
ago, and had some over in the cash.
Congratulations. I saw the acronym and I was like, we had all right.
Nice job using
Yeah, I
it.
did that a lot. Yeah, it took a little bit to learn.
I mean, I don't remember how many years I've done an internship, but it's since 2006.
12 years.
And I started in June of 2006 full time, but never like much intern. And so I had to like figure that out in 2 weeks. Or no, like 3 days. It was a little intense. But I loved it. And then now the only one I do anymore is third camp. So they just make like a highlight video. It's kind of the highlight of the summer. The highlight video.
Nice one. That's awesome. That's great.
Oh, we were over at the
So are you on the side up there?
Nice to get to know you.
Oh
yeah, sorry, I didn't specify where I work. I work at Do It Now. Work for STS. I got my ID today.
How long have you been there?
What time is it?
9 p.m. today. First day.
That's so cool that I see you on your
I know, it was so, I saw that my schedule, and I was like, I thought it was for the week, just for the week. I'm working for this. And I saw it too, but I didn't actually think that students would be here today. You know?
A lot of collaboration with ITAs.
I remember this conversation last year when we were recording. And I enjoyed it. We had a philosophy that's really big.
Yep. Back when I was backing you up by Tony. So.
Oh, weird, really?
Yep.
That's pretty late.
I met AJ as Tony, and then later when he and Carolyn were together, and I've known Carolyn since junior high school. When they got together, then it was like, oh, this is Tony. Oh, wait, Jay, hello. It is nice to meet you, man. What's your name? So, I hope I didn't just blow your cover.
Did you all really? A stands for answer.
Yeah.
I went by Tony like my whole life, and I was like, it doesn't really fit me.
Well, I thought it was the opposite. I thought that you went by Tony for like a certain time of your life.
That is also what I thought, yes.
No, like I grew up as
It's a really cool outfit. I think so. Have you seen that one where
I
they?
recently saw a post.
Yeah, there's a guy. It's like he just learned.
I told my son he was a first grade science taker.
Right now, actually, that's
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
They have a lot of names.
That's not serendipity.
Yeah. So you said.
I've heard
There are so many names.
I've heard other names, but not that.
Yeah, there.
Who's
Who's John?
That's like my older brother. He was a
Yeah. That's gotta be acting, right?
It's always hard to stop these conversations because I find them so fruitful, and I hope that you did as well. The opportunity to just hear from one another about what other hosts are doing, generate some ideas, and hopefully you continue to do that throughout this hour we have together. So just briefly, I'm going to share some information with you. And this is, some of you will recognize some of this if you've been here before. We did do some updates for this year. Chris Lupton was not able to be here today, but she did help me update the materials here. So you can see one thing we did is change the title. Who are Gen Z, post-millennials, iGen, centennials in the workplace? So there are so many different names for the generation of students with whom you'll be working this summer. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some tips and best practices for this particular generation. So what's the name of this cohort? Well, there's a lot of dispute on what the name is. You can kind of see these are the different generations defined. I myself am a proud Gen Xer. I definitely grew up as a latchkey kid, and so, you know, I think that's a huge part of my experience growing up. So the Pew Research Center has been committed to measuring public attitudes on key issues and documenting differences in those attitudes across generation groups and demographic groups. So, you know, generations is one way that they do that, and so the Pew Research Center says it's too early to give this generation a name. However, the New York Times asked readers to take a stab at that, and so there were several contenders as far as possible names. I think one related that I read in that article had to do with selfies. So anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. But post-millennials is one good name, but it's kind of strange to be defined by what you're not or what you're after. So anyway, interesting to think about that. So I do have a question for you all in the audience. How many of you currently work with, live with, or recreate with post-millennials, by a show of hands? The oldest now are 21 or 22. And they're, as the last slide showed, they would be anybody who was born after kind of 1996. So it looked like, what, about half maybe? A third of people, I think. I didn't do a good enough count of that. Okay. And then, of course, the folks who are sitting here, our young folks who are sitting here also would raise your hands, right? Because you are that generation. All right, good. So here's a few pieces of knowledge or information about this post-millennial group. So they are born 1996 to the present. They're cloud natives rather than digital natives, like their millennial counterparts. They're adept at web-based research and self-education. A really interesting example that I think about this is, you know, when I'm teaching, part of my role at ITA is to teach leadership and career development. And one particular student who's in the class of 2018, I remember, like, he was always, anytime there was a conversation and I asked, you know, how would you define X? The first thing that he would do was get his phone out and Google it. And just like that, you know, it's just like instant. You know, and the dictionary, a thing of the past perhaps, if you're, you know, the hard copy of it anyway. So that self-education piece. Most highly educated and most diverse generations so far. They want to make a difference in the world, defined by key political, economic, and social factors in their lifetime so far. And that's true, I think, across generations. But, you know, for example, Parkland students would be a great case in point of that in terms of how they are influencing the narrative around gun control right now in the country. So just a little information on who they are. And next, how you can help them learn. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the idea of the fixed versus the growth mindset. It was brought forth by Carol Dweck, and students know about it because they learn it in leadership class. But one of the things that I want to emphasize here is there are certain techniques that help to cultivate that growth mindset more than the fixed mindset. So it's really important to think about when you're praising this generation, making sure that you're praising for effort, but you're specifying what they did well. Because if you praise for effort without specifying, you're really cultivating more of that fixed mindset. And students of all ages can lose trust in adults who just praise them generally without giving them a lot of specifics. What was effective about their effort? What worked? What did you notice that you really found useful or interesting? So some things that you can do to help them learn, and to, again, helping them learn relates to cultivating that growth mindset, is providing opportunities for students to reflect on their own learning. So I know, for example, I think, Dennis, you do this. and sorry to call you out, I hope I'm right about this, but having the intern at the end of the day shoot you an email. Haven't you done that in the past? Right, and do you want to speak a little bit about that?
I manage an IT help desk, and when we've had students, this is my second year doing the program, it's a good position, but we've had students working, they're actually working with a little bit of independence, and at the end of the day, just ask them to, through criteria, what did you do, what did you learn, and what problems you had, and it was not hard and fast if they skipped a day or a couple days, but making them think at the end of every day what they did. And more importantly, I think communicating that to somebody else.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So giving them a chance to reflect on their own learning. And they're doing that as a part of what we expect of them. They have to do journal entries for us. They have to do their own final report at the end. But it's good to practice that within the context of the workplace and for you as the host or employer to have some opportunity, whether that's an email, whether that's a conversation, right? That might look different depending on your particular situation. So again, the example of letting them assess themselves regularly and report back on how they have developed and what they've been learning and how they've been evolving in their role. So another thing that you can do to help them learn, and this may sound strange or it might sound a little bit uncomfortable, but highlighting mistakes in the everyday practice of learning. And again, this article comes from Education Week. We do have references at the end. I should also mention that this PowerPoint is in your folder. I did forget to mention that before we started. But you might say something like, I don't want to know what you found easy, I want to know what you got wrong. I changed the language on that from the article to found challenging, because that would be my preference on that, because that's where the learning will be, right? So maybe something like that in your own language. So that gets students naturally to think about how much they're learning and developing, and will get them to think about what other strategies they could try. I think that this is particularly important in many contexts, but especially like in help desk kind of contexts, right, where troubleshooting is the name of the game, right? That it's not, getting from point A to point B is never linear. You have to try a lot of different things. So thank you. And finally, another way that this article suggests is using group work. Now, many of you have individual students, so that might not be possible in your particular situation, but if it is, or, even if there are perhaps other students who are interns who work in the office, that kind of thing, where peers can talk about what they struggled with and explore individual strengths of different students. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what was number 3? What did you do? What did you learn?
What problems did you have? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to write that down to share. Okay, so best practices with PM, post-millennial, interns. So explaining how your interns work fits into the big picture and the benefits to others that they are helping to provide, right? Students want to feel useful. They want to feel like they're doing something meaningful. So being able to provide that context and provide that framework is very helpful. And even if the student is more in a learning role, right, and less in a role where they are producing something, the opportunity to learn and to, that you're wanting to help them have more exposure to this field and think about for themselves whether or not they want to go in that direction, that sort of thing, can be part of that. Giving them a variety of tasks within a day and at least one back burner or quote-unquote carrot project. If a student only has one project, it's going to be challenging, right? They may get bored, they may get frustrated, they might hit a wall and need to take a break and have an opportunity to get their mind off of whatever is giving them trouble and put their energy somewhere else and then be able to go back to that. So that idea of a variety of tasks and the back burner or carrot project is really helpful in addressing that. Giving them meaningful problems to solve. And finally, focusing on the learning experiences by being the coach on the side rather than the sage on the stage.
Wait, what was that?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So the coach on the side rather than the sage on the stage, right? So this notion that the sage on the stage I think of as like the all-knowing professor, you know, that's kind of the image that comes to mind for me, that has all the wisdom and, you know, you're going to learn so much from me, and the person who's like in the audience has nothing to offer, right? Or the professor has nothing to learn from the student, right? It's a transactional relationship. Does that clarify that? Okay, all right. Thank you for having me back up on that. Some more best practices, giving feedback, making it regular, specific, and two-way. So schedule regular check-ins. This is really important. Our students really value that. So our recommendation is a minimum of twice a day, if possible. So perhaps once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Be specific with that feedback. This is great because right? Did you have any problems doing ABC at XYZ point in the process? That might be a question that you could ask. Creating that comfortable environment for student feedback, saying something on your end like, I love answering questions, and today I'm available at this time. Or students usually have questions about X, especially those of you who are veteran hosts have a sense of that, right? Do you have any thoughts, recommendations, or questions for me? So this is some language that you can potentially use to have these conversations. So we're happy to provide assistance as you shape your intern's experience. Feel free to contact me. I think the other thing that we did is in that folder that you received, there's a list of all of the hosts, and I do that on purpose so that if there's somebody here today, like Dennis, for example, he's at WEPAC, who has something that you thought was really intriguing and you want to reach out, you've got each other's contact information, so you can do that. That's right before the PowerPoint that we just went through, with all the interns, all the internship listings, the hosts, and even the interns' names. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into our panel, and I'm very excited to bring everyone up for that. And this is kind of what I think is the highlight of this day today. So feel free to come on up, and we're going to get started with that. AJ is going to be facilitating that for us.
All right, are we all ready for the panel discussion? Great.
No throwing tomatoes.
Yes, and for that matter, thank you all for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. I was telling some of the students beforehand, any specific ideas and stuff like that gives us as hosts, I'm actually an intern host as well, really great ideas to bring into our internships each year, or if this is our first time, of course, helps us to understand better what this looks like and how it works. So we're going to start by, well first, my name is AJ Daughtry-Krill. I work for ITA. I know a lot of you, but not all of you. I'm in charge of the technology curriculum that our students learn. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask when it's appropriate. I'll stick around afterwards for a while. And then let's just go down and introduce yourselves and where you hosted an intern or where you were interning.
My name is Pete Vallejo. I am from Software Training for Students, which is the group that helps the UW student community learn software skills, technology. And I actually had, among other people, the fellow beside me as one of the interns, and second staff member, intern member, 2 year, which is very nice. So we're doing student training and technology focused things now. Thanks.
I'm Elias Moore Barbosa. I intern for software training students with Pete, along with another fellow intern. He sort of explained what we did. So.
I'm Jim Porter. I'm the system admin for the Institute on Aging. We've hosted an ITA intern, I believe, for this will be the 4th year now. I forget, but and the interns in the past have assisted with web maintenance, web redesign. Last year, we had the pleasure of using some creative skills of our intern to create an infographic to be incorporated into materials to be handed out at an international conference with over 6,000 participants.
My name is Alejandra Miranda-Naxi. I interned on Memorial Library's Library and Technology Group at their help desk. I helped resolve tickets and I assisted patrons with loaning equipment.
My name is Heather Schumann. I'm a librarian at Steenbach Library. I have hosted one intern in the past, but I know that Steenbach has hosted more than just one. I don't know how many we've done. But we end up, the last intern did a lot of graphic design work for us. So signage in the libraries and also graphic design that could be used in social media. So that was very useful to us in the library.
My name is Ryan Jackson, and I interned at the Comprehensive Health Enhancement Support System in the Mechanical Engineering Building. And what I did was I helped research and develop technology to help people cope with the health challenges such as cancer, loneliness, and asthma.
Thank you all. I feel like we should give them a round of applause because that's a lot of stuff. So this first question is for anyone to answer on the panel. So, don't all jump at once. What projects did you have your interns work on, or what projects were you working on? Some of you already mentioned that stuff, but maybe if you go in depth or just repeat it.
I can expand.
Great, I actually had a follow-up, so go ahead.
Okay. The infographic that was created last year from our intern was based on, was for a longitudinal study that the Institute on Aging is in charge of. It's called Midlife in the United States, a national longitudinal study on health and well-being. The study looked at how many factors affect or have a role in influencing the health and well-being from people early adulthood into midlife and old age. And the conference participants, last year was the big one, the international conference with people coming from over 75 countries. And so we were really happy to have someone help us kind of give a quick handout and say, okay, this is what our study is about, and a nice infographic presentations.
Jim, my question for you is, how aware was the intern that over I think you said 6,000 people might be viewing this?
Yeah, so that information was kind of sprung. It's like, oh yeah, in one of our check-ins, like, yeah, this will be utilized at a conference in July. So, and this is how many people would be there. And there was a little look of like, really? But it was up to the challenge, and so I really appreciate her help. And was amazing at utilizing the resources that she's learned at ITA, from going out to lynda.com to, I'm not a creative person, so I'm a very binary individual. So it was nice to have someone offer some creative outlook on the big project.
Gotcha. Thank you. Other people, what projects did you work on? Yeah.
I can start. So one of the challenges of the libraries is to get out the message of all the services that are available to students. So we're constantly trying to decide, like, are these services, do the students not know that we have these services, or are they not useful to the students? So having someone who's in the same age range as undergraduates help us create our message to students and get out the message of our services was really useful to us. And when our intern came to us, we asked her, like, what are you working on in your ITA internship that's really interesting to you, that you would like to build on? And she really wanted to work on visual materials. So then we were able to get her input on what areas she wanted to look at and what she was interested in, and build some actual things that she could put on her resume and have to show a future employer or a future grad program or something. And also that would help us, again, translate our services into like visuals that would be interesting to students.
Thank you. Did you want to go, Pete, as like the last host to share?
Sure. So our group does a lot of training for students, so we have a lot of materials that students will use to learn things, a lot of self-study, things like that. And so part of what the interns that we had were working on was going through those for reference and for seeing, is this actually helpful, is this appropriate, is this useful, seeing if they would actually be getting the kinds of information and skills that they were using, so they're basically test driving and offering user feedback on many of those pieces. We were also within a department with a number of other training groups, so at different points they were working on doing some online learning development, using some new tools, learning some of the skills with that. What were some of the other pieces that you were doing? My memory is going to my old age, so.
So yeah, we began with like researching on lynda.com, like classes that we would like to learn about or eventually teach. We created a summary of a lesson that it could be, and that was just one of the few many tasks, or one of the many tasks that we have done. We also went out and took photos that we might edit in those classes.
Some of which we're actually using in our Photoshop class right now, which is very exciting.
Yeah, Ryan.
So what we did in the engineering building is when I started off, it was really just kind of internship jobs. Like my first assignment was to kind of capture the application that they were developing. So with screenshots, I'd just go inside the app and then take pictures of all the different pages that was in it, so that they could later map it out on what they were building. And I think that when I first had that project, it really kind of, it really stuck with me. I go back to what Sarah said. It made me feel like I was actually doing something and not just just an intern, just being given all the non-desirable jobs. And as I progressed through my weeks, a couple of weeks, I began to work on their test phones. So they had shipped in some test phones that would have their software that they were developing. And what I would do is I'd go into the phone and then update all the software, and then install their application that they were developing, make sure that was all working. And to finish off the week, I moved all the information from their old website to the new website. And yeah, it really, the jobs that they gave me kind of made me feel like I was actually doing something. I thought that was very beneficial.
Great. Did you want to share some of what you did in your internship?
Sure. So with my internship, it was mostly working at the help desk. And that was something I was very excited to do because I enjoy helping people, and with the skills that I gained through ITA, I really felt that it was a good fit. At first I was a little worried because the only way I'd helped pages of a library was through volunteering through a library near my house, face-to-face, but this was a little different now that it was through calls and through emails. My first call, which I was very nervous, they kind of set me off. They were like, okay, now we practice, now you do it. So I was very nervous. Here I am waiting at the table. Will it ring? Will it ring? And then suddenly, ring! And then I don't want to answer it. But I pick it up reluctantly, and surprisingly enough, it was someone else working in our group calling in sick. But I think that's what got through me, and after that first call, I moved all my nervousness away. I zipped it up in a Ziploc bag and threw it away in the window. And I really, I put my mind to it. My supervisor was very helpful. He began working with me. It wasn't, before I started being able to answer calls, he would let me go through procedures of taking calls. He made little worksheets with basic questions, follow-up questions that you should always ask. And I thought that was very helpful. After that, it was just a matter of looking up if this problem, for example, if it was a problem with the printer, I would look up if this problem's happened before. And I really enjoyed just being able to answer with full honesty and knowing that I could be able to help someone.
Thank you. It's super fun hearing about all of the different experiences you've had. This is a question just for the employer side. So, what made the internship experience successful for you?
You can go first. So, for me personally, I found it successful because I felt like my intern left excited about coming to UW and excited about using the libraries. So I really felt like that made it successful for me, because that's, I think, my biggest mission is to get some excited about coming to campus and knowing what the libraries can do, because a lot of undergrads don't know. I think also getting fresh eyes on the message that the library is putting out to students, getting her perspective on that, getting fresh signage sheet made so much stuff for us. Like just looking at the amount of things that she produced in that very short amount of time was really amazing. So having new signage, she helped with the display, just having just pieces around the library that made it more inviting to students. It was just really great. And then also I think just having these kinds of experiences for me personally, and teaching about what the library does, and like, you know, I love this campus. So kind of talking about the campus as well helps me remember like my mission here and what I'm trying to accomplish.
So a really fresh perspective right in the middle of the summer for you.
Yeah, and helping me translate what I do here in a way that makes sense to students.
Thank you.
One of the things that I thought was, or felt successful for me, was getting that additional perspective from people who were not me, and people who had a totally foreign experience to what I was very familiar with from being part of my day-to-day job. So being able to, having to explain something and contextualize it without the assumptions of already knowing what that is, was a very useful and helpful challenge for me to be able to say, okay, this is what we do, and this is why, and this is how, and this is the thing that is hopefully the outcome from it. So does that work? Does that actually happen in that sense? And so having it as a opportunity to re-examine and share what I was doing. And it was also a good opportunity to try to take something to have to specifically articulate the things that needed to be done when they had just lived in my head as like, oh, this is a task that we need to get done. What does that actually look like? What does this, what checklist could be checked off that will say this is now a completed thing, and how do I complete that? So that was neat. So.
Jim?
The success for me was, well, first of all, being a one-person IT support for Research Center. It's nice to always have some extra hands and minds to help complete those tasks that are on the list that never ends. So being, having a creative mind there and willing to, kind of throw things at me, say, well, what if we do this, And so that independence of, coming up with ideas was like great for me, because it was way out of my wheelhouse to say, okay, yeah, that's perfect, let's layer that, because that's a generation, I believe, that's more familiar with the graphics and the whole output of social media. It's like, okay, let's do that, I'll run with it, take it to the director, and it was loved, and it's like, okay, that was creative knowledge there was just wonderful. That was the success for me.
Nice. Yeah, I can't help but jump in here because I also host Intern. Really quick, so I have our intern collect highlight video footage and then create a highlight video of our summer camp about our video camp. So it's a super fun camp, everyone's having a good time. And what's successful for me each year is, like, if I had to do that every year, it would become formulaic. I would be like, and this is the scene where they're giving each other a high five, and this is where the music, comes in. But having that fresh perspective, the narrative is completely different than anything I would ever produce, and it happens every single summer. So that's what makes it successful for me. So students, interns, what made the internship experience successful and positive for you? Ryan.
I'd say the experience of working in a professional environment, well, for me, I enjoy it because, you know, it's different than like a regular job for a kid my age. So, like working at McDonald's or something. So this experience was amazing. So I got to experience the walking into the office and it's dead quiet. And nobody says anything to you. It's different. So I just really enjoyed having this opportunity as a teenager to get to work in an environment where it's more professional and like everyone is like doing something great.
Thank you. Sure, Alejandro.
I loved my internship. If I could recommend it to anyone, any other students, I would. What I really liked about my internship and what I really wish I can have more opportunities of similar kind was that the environment was very, very, very unique in the sense that I've never been to any other place, or worked, rather. Even though, so where I interned, it was like an open space-ish work environment. And even though I came in thinking cubicles and, very, very private place, it's pretty open. Everyone was helpful. From the moment I walked in, my supervisor introduced me to everyone in our little group, and I did feel welcome. I liked that I was able to ask questions, and many people also asked me questions. I liked that there wasn't a single moment where if I was lost, I couldn't ask for help. And I just really think that I learned a lot of abilities and skills that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have internships.
Yeah, so for me, other than the environment being different, I feel it was really successful because he had a lot of tasks that he would give to us and projects, and each would be different. So if we weren't good at one thing, we would be good at something else. But if we did have problems on the thing we weren't that good at, we could always walk like 10 feet or so to Pete and ask him questions.
Thanks, everyone. I just have one more question. What advice do you have for this year's supervisors? It's for everybody.
The check-ins. The check-ins are awesome. With our intern, started each day. We started with a check-in in the morning to set goals for the day or the week, and ask, okay, what's your plan of action? What do you think? What are you going to start with first? And then towards the end of the day before leaving, we'd say, okay, well, let's get together again and say, okay, tell me how things turned out for you, what directions or questions you have for me, and show me what you've worked on, and get that feedback, and kind of set a goal. Okay, in the morning, let's think about this, and so things change in the morning, say, okay, now let's go to plan B. So those check-ins are really great.
What was the length of those check-ins, do you recall?
It's about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Other advice? Ryan?
So some advice that I would give is that just remember that we're still teenagers. For a lot of kids like me, it was my first job experience. So just what I would recommend is to just be nice and open to your intern, and just kind of show them around the office, like get them acquainted, so that when you walk in the first day, you get to know everybody's name, so you can ask questions, or just kind of get a real feel for the office, so that it's not such a scary place when you first walk in.
Excellent.
Yeah, along the lines of that,
they are teenagers, and that means that things that might be boring and everyday to you are new to them. And so a staff meeting that you're dreading going to is like, wow, this is what people do all day. Okay. People with real jobs are doing. And so that's a nice opportunity to sort of share things that may be more mundane and see them with novel eyes or with a sense of opportunity and new experience rather than the same old thing.
And for me, I think making sure they have a lot of different things to do. I feel if you give them just one giant project, it might get really stressful. They feel like they have to do amazing on this thing, and if they don't, they fail their internship. But if you give them multiple little things to do, then they can really have a positive outlook on all these different activities.
I think too, offering many different options and activities sets them up to advocate for themselves as well. And I think that's really important as they move forward, that they should learn how to find a way to approach a situation where they are thinking about how is this going to benefit me as well. We kept trying to get our intern to think about what is it that you want to get out of this? How is this going to help you as you move forward? And I think that's just a really important life skill to get out of this, because this is about them becoming lifelong learners and advocating for themselves. I don't know, do you feel like that's something that makes sense? So right away, of course, they're not going to know what they want to get out of it, right? Because again, this is new, but trying to set up those different experiences and get them into that mindset of what am I going to have when I leave this? So what can I put on a resume after this? So that can be beneficial to them. And then listen, right? Really listen to what they're saying. And again, set up an environment where it's okay to ask questions, find their interests. And then the other thing, because they're also taking classes during this internship. So what are they learning in their classes, and can you tie that to what you're doing in your environment as well? That way they're bringing their learning into their work. I think that it's very beneficial.
Definitely. Are you ready to share either one of you? Advice? Okay, Alejandra.
So the advice I'd give to you guys as supervisors is to be open-minded. We are, as many of us have pointed out, especially us who have interned, we are teenagers. We sometimes do get bored. We sometimes might think that something is boring, but if we point our minds to it and we have an environment where we're allowed to ask questions or help, I think is super important, because it is something that, regardless of the person, help is always needed at some point. So if you guys could just be just being open-minded and being able to answer questions, I think it would be great.
Thanks. Jim, you want to close us out?
Did you? Did the check-ins.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But
That's right.
One other point that I would say that I thought was important is finding the balance between offering space for self-directed work and also giving specific things that they are assigned to do. So making sure it's not either all do whatever or only do what I'm saying. Having a balance between here's a thing that needs to get done and here are some options for things that you could be doing. Because then you get both the do I have to and oh cool I get to parts of it, which is nice. So.
Cool. Well, this has been fabulous. Thank you, everyone. And that concludes our panel for this afternoon. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Mulling over.
No, thank you, AJ. Thank you, panelists. That was great. I ended up taking some notes here. Just a time check here. We're at about 4:26, and I do want to try to get you out of here as close to on time as possible. But there are a couple things I do want to make sure everybody gets on the same page about. So if everybody could take out your folders There's a few things I just want to bring your attention to. They're after the PowerPoint, and this is for some logistical pieces. So we have this ITA internship supervisor checklist, and there's a list of things to do by June the 1st. So the first category here is this background check and the mandated reporter training. So that's something that we have, we are required because of Executive Order 54, which was signed by the governor several years ago, to have all intern supervisors undergo this background check. It's different than the background check that you do when you go to you start working at the university, because it allows you to work with pre-college populations. Most of you are familiar with it if you've hosted before. It does have to be renewed every 2 years. So all of you who were needing said background check got an email from Carrie Golden before she went out on maternity leave. And then you were set up with basically, in our system, if you will, you get an email from Gen Info. Often it goes to junk mail, so please check that. If you are not recalling having gotten said email, we do need you to do that background check. It takes 1 to 2 weeks to process. Technically, we can't place an intern unless the host has completed the background check. So it is very essential that that gets done. If there's somebody, let's say you're going to be on vacation for 1 week of the 2 weeks that you're hosting, in that case, we would definitely want another person's name for that time. So you can let me know if that's the case. Also, there's a mandated reporter online training. It's fairly simple. There's an online certificate that gets generated. That needs to be emailed to Ron Jetty. He's our executive director. He couldn't be with us today. Usually that's gone to our assistant director, but since she's out, it's going to go to him. If you have done that in the last 5 years, you're current, but once every 5 years, you have to redo the training. So next thing on the items here is internship funding.
Sarah, will we know if we need to do that training?
Yeah, so if you have never hosted before, you do need to do it. Yeah, yeah.
Will that be coming yet? Or?
So that should have actually been in the email as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so it should have been in the one email from Carrie Golden.
Okay.
So let me know if you're having trouble finding that, and I'll follow up with the appropriate folks. Internship funding, I'm still, please let me know if you're covering the cost of the intern, or if I am. I think there's some hosts, I'm still not sure on that. Also, we need to if you are providing the funding, Brian Rostello and Do It HR, his email is here, and usually what hosts do is just provide the funding string to him so that he can make sure that the intern gets paid out of the correct pot of money. If your intern, you want to pay them more than $9, there's info here about that separate process. And then as far as the internship time cards, the same email to Brian Rostello and also to me, and designate who will be the approver. I'm backup approver on every single student's time card if for some reason you don't get to it, but that's a fairly simple step as well. And that's the UW-HRS system. And then as far as by the start of the internship date, just reviewing the next document in here and making sure that you're clear on what the supervisor, it looks like this, what the supervisor responsibilities are, the student responsibilities, and the ITA staff responsibilities are. And then I also would like you to strongly encourage you to review that cover letter and the resume of your students so you know a little bit about them before they're coming in. And I email those to you approximately 2 weeks before the start of your internship. So if you are hosting in session B, you won't get those until sometime in July. And then the other important thing is that on the first day of your internship, the intern working with you, report here to Union South at 8:45 a.m. to meet your intern and help them get to the site so they know how to get there on their own from then on. And there might be some variability in that depending on the situation. I'm thinking about you being on the far west side, but generally speaking, that's an exciting moment for the interns to get to meet their hosts and right here in Union South. They're here, as Heather mentioned, they have curriculum that they do with me and also with AJ and his counterpart Juan. And so they're doing learning outside of just the context of their learning with you. As far as the ITA internship supervisor information, there's a couple items I want to highlight on here. The students have clear responsibilities, and it's my role to talk with them and make sure that they're on board. A few things that we find very helpful if you can do as a host, if you can provide that context for the assigned project and really helping them understand that. A lot of great stuff was already said, so I don't want to repeat that. Also, if you can help them think about accomplishment, how might they write up what they did for you or with you in their resume? Because they're still learning how to write resumes, right? So if you can help them with coming up with some language for that, that's very, very helpful. At the closing meeting they have with me, they will be working on updating their resume with their internship experience in it. So if they come prepared with some ideas from you, or that you and them worked on together, that's excellent. Also the other thing I'd say is there's an evaluation that we have you do after the internship. I email it out. It is very helpful to us to know what worked or didn't work with students. The other thing I want to mention is that it's the last check mark under supervisor responsibilities. Our students have the opportunity to earn credit from Madison Metropolitan School District and also be eligible for the Department of Public Instruction, or DPI's employability skills certificate. There's a specific evaluation that has to be done for them to get that certificate. That I have provided a copy of that, the paper version. However, there's a Google form version. What I can tell you is that I talked to the woman who coordinates this for the MMSD district. A host does not have to write specific examples in every cell. I looked at that, I said, oh, I'm worried that our hosts are going to think that's too much. She said that it's often the case that there's like 1 or 2 or 3 maybe comments that a host would make in comments in 1 or 2 or 3 cells. But this allows our student to get this certificate upon graduation from MMSD, which is a really great thing to be able to do. So if you are able to, and I will be emailing those out, but I did want you to have that paper copy in case you want to keep notes for yourself or something like that. And then my responsibility is to, as I said, meet with the interns before and after their internship, as well as at morning meetings, to help provide tech help. We do that for students only. We do that on a limited basis because AJ and Juan are doing that while they're also teaching. So this is where lynda.com becomes a great resource for students, and folks in your departments who can help become a great resource. And I also come and visit, which I love to do, every intern at the internship. So that's another thing that I do during that time period that they're with you. So that's essentially it as far as the folder and what's in here. I do want to say that in closing that we have found that our ITA interns are often much more capable of much more than we at first know or think that they would be capable of. So our goal really as a program is to provide them with enough variety and challenge to be engaged and enough structure and support to be successful. And the last thing I want to say is that this partnership that we have with you is incredibly invaluable. We cannot do this without you. I will say that our students have learned a ton from this experience and are very grateful for the opportunity. And so thank you so much for partnering with us. I know that times right now are, fiscally, or the budgets are tight, so we very much appreciate you working with us. And our students are very excited to be working with you. So I'll be around. I am going to run to the restroom real fast, but please get some more snacks. Feel free to stay and visit, mingle, ask other questions. And thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.